Happy Veterans Day, everybody. Hey, we just finished the whiskey review. We're knocking back a couple fingers of the Colonel E.H. Taylor Small Batch, and we're going to talk about Veterans Day, right? November 11th, iconic date, iconic date. I posted it on Instagram, posted it on Facebook, even posted it on that new one, Parlor. Um, what is Veterans Day, right? Veterans Day goes all the way back to World War One, right? World War One, for me, has become kind of, it's a little infatuation of mine, being the history geek I am, right? It was the first modern war, right? It brought us some of the iconic weaponry and technology that we see today, right? I've always said that, right? Warfare spawned innovation, right? um, Veterans Day was originally Armistice Day. The treaty ending the war to end all wars was signed. Was signed and on the 11th at about like 5:38 a.m. And the treaty stated that on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, hostilities would cease between the Allies and the Empire of Germany, and it did. The guns were silenced. Unfortunately, the war to end all wars did not. And, we have fought subsequent wars since. Veterans Day was then changed. It was changed from Armistice Day to Veterans Day, ultimately becoming a national holiday in 1954, signed and ratified by Congress, and then ultimately signed into law by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Um, but why World War One, right? So just a couple things, things that are near and dear to me. One of a gift from a dear friend of mine is this original World War One tunic from the 82nd Infantry Division. Beautiful, kept. Obviously I can't fit in this thing, but a gift from a dear friend, Mr. Rich Barbado, over on the East Coast. You see the original bullion patches that were made in theater. The soldier's rank, his chevrons, campaign chevrons. Um, this thing, along with the hat, the cover, dear gifts, and close to me. Um, Another iconic World War One item, that we have here in my home anyway, is the ever classic 1911. This is obviously a modernized version. I've got a light here, but the design is still intact. I mean, this, for all intents and purposes, is the exact same weapon that was designed by John Browning back in 1909. The joke about the 1911 in weapons circles is the two-time World War champ, right? But again, iconic, again, from World War One. Veterans Day for me, as I've stated in a lot of my posts, I don't ever take it for me. I don't relish in the attention. I don't relish in the thank yous, and everybody's different, right? I'm not gonna look frown upon anyone who takes those thank yous or those perks, but for me it's always a solemn time. I kind of reflect a lot. Uh, just me personally, I know, 12 guys who aren't with us anymore, uh, who gave or made that ultimate sacrifice. Um, and then as I stated in the post, we've buried even more since the war has ended. Uh, the poppies in our home, they're prevalent all over the house. I buy them. My girls, they wear them. As they remember the soldiers. They remember the ones that didn't get to come home. They remember the ones that didn't get to have families or didn't get to be with their children anymore. And part of that, and something that's been very dear to me, and one of my all-time favorite poems from the era, is Flanders Fields. I have to read it. I got to be truthful. I'm not good enough to have it memorized, but it was written by John McCrae, on the battlefield. John McCrae was born in 1872. He was a Canadian doctor and he was a teacher. He fought in the South African War in 1899, and while he was there, he was he was beat down. One of your first real, back then, PTSD. He was known by different names, and for many years, decades, if not centuries, there was no name for it. He left the military and he was disheartened. Medical conditions there for the soldiers, and he picked up his medical career in 1901. He moved to England. He 1904 he became a member of the Royal College of Physicians, and he taught and wrote, and he wrote poetry, he wrote textbooks, and then of course 1914 brought along the war. Being a subject of the crown, a citizen of Canada, he was pressed into service. He was designated as the brigade surgeon for the 1st Brigade of Canadian Field Artillery, and he served in that capacity. As the war drug on in 1915, he had to bury a buddy, and a friend of his, a young man, had been killed by an enemy artillery barrage. And just, if any of y'all know about the war, it was very, very primitive conditions. They buried their dead in very hasty graves. Shortly after the burial of his friend, he noticed the poppies were sprouting, and they just carpeted swaths of the French and Belgian countryside. And he wrote his famous poem, In Flanders Fields. And as a result of his fame, I mean, the poem went viral, we'll say, right? as much as it can in 1915. It was published in many languages on both sides of the trenches. And, he kind of gained some notoriety. After that, he was moved, and he became head of a hospital, chief of medical services, kind of in the rear. But ultimately, the impacts of the war were made. His last poem was The Anxious Dead, which is an incredible piece, very, very somber piece. And then he, after writing that, he died of pneumonia and meningitis in 1918, while still on the front. I'm going to read this, and again, bear with me that I'm reading it, but I want to make sure I give it justice. In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row. They mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. I mean, those words have been burned into my soul. It's about remembrance. It's about not letting those that died die for nothing. We as soldiers, we never dictate policy. We are an extension of that policy, granted, We enforce that policy through brute force and terror and death. But ultimately, you know, we're just men, we're just people. And we're put in unusual circumstances to do incredible things. And those bonds formed during those stressful times are beyond anything I've ever experienced. It's a fraternity, a brotherhood, unlike any other. I challenge all of you guys, especially today of days, just remember somebody. Say a little prayer, say a silent prayer, give a little nod. We all know someone, right? That old man at the cafe who sits by himself, you know, the guy that drinks a little too much at the bar, you know, the Vietnam vet you bump into at the grocery store. Say thank you. Give them a handshake, shake their hand, ask them a question, ask them how they are. Sometimes those guys are by themselves. Sometimes those guys don't have anyone, especially them old timers. Sometimes they just want to talk. And it doesn't have to be about the war. It can be about anything. Change somebody's life just for that brief moment. Again, happy Veterans Day, y'all. Happy Armistice Day. Wear a poppy, get a poppy, a little red thread, a red something, put it on your lapel. Have somebody ask you what it means and explain it. All right. I love y'all. Happy Veterans Day again. Happy Armistice Day. I didn't even get to take a swig, but here's to y'all. Here's to them. I'll never forget y'all. And salud. Till Valhalla.